We're going to kick off with our three panelists, and we're going to ask them to say a few words on what their priorities are in their real day-to-day running of their banks. And they're fairly different. And so we're going to start with Johan, and we're going to listen to what are your priorities for your bank.
Could I have a bit more light in the room? Is that working?
There are people still in the room, yeah.
Because, I mean, when I saw the program today of the summit, I saw that you guys have been talking the whole day about technology, you've been talking about disruption, you've been talking about banking union stuff, etc. And I think, I mean, the real problem for all of us is not really technology or digitalization. I think all of us do consider this as a given. But therefore, I would like to do a little poll, if you allow me. And I'm very pleased to understand that your digital solution for doing the poll is out of work. So could I have a bit more light, please, so they can really see the room? Yeah. Could I ask you all to stand up? Please rise. Don't worry. So this, I mean, it's the last session of the day, so come on. So actually, this is what they call an analog poll, you know. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Those of you who have never ever bought something online, please sit down. So if you never ever bought something online, please sit down. Okay? Just for the people in the front, nobody sat down. For those of you who have never ever booked a travel online, please sit down. Again, nobody sat down. Those of you, I mean, a lot of people start worrying that they have to be standing right the whole session, but don't worry. So for those of you who never ever experienced Uber, please sit down. Nice, nice. Just have a look.
A bit more, huh?
That's not bad, guys. Not bad. For all of you who have experienced Uber or the Uber service as being fast, convenient, simple, and safe. Let me summarize it differently. So fast, convenient, simple, and safe, who have actually driven your customer experience to the top. For those who have experienced that, please stand right. All the others, sit down. I'm talking about Uber. So if you think Uber sucks, please sit down. Please have a look. For those of you who are a customer of KBC, I would actually ask to sit down, but I'm not going to do that.
You can do that in Brussels, can't you?
Yeah, for sure.
You take a limited risk.
For sure. But let me ask now the essence. For those of you who would use the qualification of the services of your bank as being fast, convenient, simple, and safe, actually who say all my services delivered by my bank to me to give me a top-notch experience as a customer, all of you who have that feeling and that qualification from their bank, please remain standing right. All the rest can sit down. Yeah. Okay, now look around. All of those are customers of KBC. Thank you very much. Please seat it. I wanted to make my point. And the point is, it's not about digitalization. It's not about technology. It's not about fancy smartphones and applications and so on and so forth. It's about customer experience. And when I was asking the question, who of you actually have experienced online purchase, all of you will be standing up, right? When I was asking the question, all of you who experienced Uber as being great and a good customer experience, all of you, but some exceptions, were standing up, right? When I asked the same question, what do you think about your bank? Most of you were sitting down. You know, it's about customer experience. Our customers do experience the outside world and they reflect upon that having that experience in mind about the service they get from a bank. And I think that is the main challenge for the banks in the next coming 2 to 3 years. And next to that, I wonder, how is regulation going to deal with that? How is our regulator going to deal with that? How is our regulation is take into account the transformation we all need to make to fulfill customer experience, as you just in this poll described? And I would love to keep it there as a kind of introduction.
Thank you very much. So customer experience is your number one priority, it seems, and as a retail bank, we would expect that, and the other banks as well. And now we go to Peter. And what's your priority then?
Well, I'm actually inspired by what Johan was saying. I think there was one thing what I think counts very strongly for our customers, that do they feel they have a meaningful relation with their bank? So maybe we are not the fastest, maybe the service is bold but not fancy. But what we experience a lot, and I'm not going to ask you to stand up and sit down, but I think that it's for increasingly a number of people important not only to be a customer and have a meaningful relation with their bank, and that means more than just being satisfied on the spot, but in a more general way. And it also means for many people working for banks. We get many people working for us who feel that they want to work for a bank and are very happy to reduce their salary demands for a bank who is meaningful. So I think with all the technology and improvement we're also going through, and for us as a smaller bank, smaller mid-sized bank, that's quite a challenge, I must say. But the one thing I really sort of hold in my both hands, and is a strategic, very important issue for us, how do we stay relevant, and how do we keep our relation meaningful? And by meaningful, I mean it's not just something what limits to our own bank. And there I come to the green element, to the sustainability element. It's very interesting what I heard today, that there is a sense of urgency I felt in the room when we talk about technology and to keep up with that. But I've not heard, also not in the session about sustainability, that same sense of urgency about climate change and how it does, what it does for us. And I feel after the Paris Treaty, we should be much more feeling that and say, like Juliana Figueres is saying, who led the whole process to Paris, said, well, we have 3 years to fix a few things. Now, I think 3 years we will not fix it, but I think we have to fix quite a number of things in the coming 10 to 20 years. And we have to start now, and actually we should have started yesterday. So I was a little bit nervous when I heard that we first have to define what sustainability actually is. I think we know what it is, we experience it daily, and it's important that we act upon it and do something about it. Now, one of the things I hope, and I see a rapid change in banking, I'm actually quite positive about what's happening in banking, is that CEOs of banks picking up that challenge. I think it's a very important challenge, and for me the most important challenge at the moment, that we see that climate change requires immediate action from banks, not just Triodos Bank. We are far too small to deal with the problem on our own. We want our brothers and sisters to join us and really make steps there. And that is for me a very important priority. One thing I want to mention to you, 2 months ago we managed to organize a letter from the CEOs of all the Dutch banks to the cabinet saying, well, we are in support of the Paris Treaty, and we named some very concrete actions we want to take. So all CEOs of all banks in the Netherlands, and send that to the parties who are in the process of forming a new cabinet. It's taking a long while in the Netherlands at the moment. We are not as slow as Belgium was at a certain moment, but we are coming close. We are coming close, I must say. And I hope that in the cabinet that there will be a new phase for us as banks to hold things together more and make a next step, a new energy treaty, and next step to climate change. The one thing what I felt is a little bit here the elephant in the room, and that is something we have discussed a couple of days ago in a presentation we did of the report, what was mentioned, that I think the risks connected to climate change are so significant and so systemic that I think regulators and politicians will look at capital weighting for brown and probably also a discount for green. Now, this is something most banks don't want to talk about, most regulators feel a bit worried about. But I was heartened by the remarks of Olivier, who also spoke here, and he said, actually, I see a good case for add-ons on capital weighting for brown. Now, that feels always bad, because bankers don't like to have higher capital weighting. But I feel we are in a phase where we probably have to deal with that. We have to look at it and see if it makes sense. We should go for it. And it's from a risk perspective. It's not from a political perspective. So that's very much on my heart. So it's a little bit broader than just Triodos. We are doing fine. We have a great market. We see a lot of possibilities. We grow by 10, 15% a year still. So that's not my primary problem, but I do see a bigger problem, and that is how do we deal with climate change as a financial sector?
Thanks, Peter. So, Frederick, what keeps you up at night? What are the priorities for you in Paris?
As you know, I'm the CEO of a bank which has the ambition to deal with pretty different markets, pretty different clients. And I'm just preparing fundamentally an investor day. So I'm trying to think about, at the end of the day, what is important to succeed in the next 10 years for a bank. And probably I can summarize it in effectively two dimensions, and it will resonate, I think, pretty well with what my colleague said, and actually the themes of this morning. First of all, it's around clients. And when I say this, there are many dimensions. It's, to a certain extent, to think how we can be sure that we will remain relevant with the clients. But it's also to ensure that precisely we remain a client-driven organization and not a bureaucracy. And when I say this, it's regarding also the need to remain agile. And I think a lot of the innovation starts from the client needs. And if the company is not close to the clients, I think we will miss, not just around accessing technology, the capacity to remain relevant. So in terms of time, can I say, I really ensure I meet with clients. Of course, it's more corporate clients than private retail clients, but I meet with a lot of corporate clients. Beyond this, of course, there is the element of innovation, because as we've seen, I think Uber is deteriorating a little bit. I might have been taking my seat, but when you ask the question, but it's fair to say a lot is going to happen, in particular, I would say, with the retail. And so the capacity to change the bank, the distribution network, and look at technology in a very different way is at the heart also of my priority. Which means that, for example, I've decided to spend some time to learn a little bit about coding. I spent a few hours to learn how to code Python. Python is one of the two languages for data, because for me it was important to understand different things, how to develop. What does that mean really to have agile development? Continuous delivery, you know, these buzzwords in IT. What does that mean, and how do we deal with that? But also, for example, to what extent traditional IT people can change. And for me, and I will discuss, of course, with my team, my conclusion is that it is feasible. It's another language, but at the end of the day, it reminds me what I was doing 30 years ago when I learned also about coding. At the end of the day, it's around logic. So it's important because when you have thousands of people in your organization, the key issue is to know how you will ensure the transition. And then the second element is around, at the end of the day, the culture, the engagement of the company. And when I say this is with the staff, with of course, the clients, as I've mentioned, but also, for example, regarding climate. We are a very large bank involved in the energy sector. We are one of the leaders in the world in financing renewable energy. We've been involved in all the offshore wind, for example, projects in Europe. So, of course, this dimension, because it gives to the staff, or it reminds maybe to the staff some meaning of being a banker, is very important. When I meet with clients, I have no issue. I know what it means to be a banker. There's no problem. When we deal with a client, you can see what you provide. But for the people who are a little bit further from the clients, it's a bit more complex. And that's where all these elements are very important. And it means also, it was one of my priorities around how to work together. Because, again, I have the fear I have is that we are, as large companies, becoming bureaucracy. That's why, for example, I implemented a new organization. I cut a layer of management. It was disturbing. And I have entered an experiment in terms of managing the company and looking at the strategy in a very different way, trying to create at the top level a much more partnership spirit. Because I think these are long-term ingredients which will help us to succeed. And again, change fundamentally what could have been, if you wish, the culture of banking 10 years ago. So these are two or three priorities.
Yeah. Well, you both talked about staying relevant, focus on the customer, and yet we saw reflected in the audience, many customers are not happy. Is there any single change you'd like to see that would help you achieve this priority of getting customer satisfaction? Is there any single rule, or is it something that's from within the bank itself, its culture, or is it sort of something exogenous, as they say, something from outside?
So, I mean, when I would have to answer this question, I would immediately say it's a lot about culture and mindset. Let's face it, in the banking industry, I've been dealing with for a very long time in the traditional way of working. You collect deposits, you transform that into lending business, and we've been doing this for ages. And nothing really exciting or disruptive happened over all these years. Our industry was well maintained within a box, it was well protected, but that is now changing. And what for me, far more fundamental than fintechs or potential disruptors living outside of the sector is the change in the mentality and the mindset of our consumers, which just expect us to behave differently and don't accept it anymore that they have to queue in lines in bank branches or that they have to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks for a decision on their mortgage or 2 weeks for a decision on their commercial credit. Now, my point is, this is on the consumer side, but our people, our staff, who have to change the back office, because we all have fancy front offices, but the real stuff still needs to be done and tackled is the back end. And that is driven by our people. Now, let me give you one example. My headquarters here in Belgium, we have 16,000 people in Belgium. Average age is 48 years old. 48. So my question to my staff in Belgium is, how would Uber behave in your business? How would Uber behave in your job? What would it mean? And most of the time, they're flabbergasted. They don't know the answer. The average age of our subsidiary in Ireland is 28 years old. You know, they behave like Uber in their current setting. And that's what we are really working upon. And that's driven by culture. Change the mindset and think digitally. You don't have to sell digitally, as a matter of speaking, but think digital. Allow your customer to be relevant, first of all, and be sure that if the customer deals with, in this case, our bank, that he is not confronted with complexity, that he's not confronted with hassle, that he's not confronted with a lot of fuss which he doesn't like. So it's all about culture, mindset, and shift in that mindset.
Peter?
Well, it's interesting to see we do not experience a real difference between customers and staff. So we feel very much customers could be staff and staff could be customers. Most of them are customers. And it's I think if you have a sort of common purpose with your customers as staff, you very much realize what you were saying as well. People feel we're working on something together. And I feel sometimes is when you talk about client relations, it's like the client is there and the bank is here. And I think what modern technology can do and help, but it's not just technology. It has to be also the real human relation as well. That people feel, actually, I'm the bank in a certain way. I always say to people when I have to speak, you're all bankers. To make clear that it's not like we are here as bankers and you're there, but there's a real interaction there. And you can steer what you want to do through your bank, and the bank should listen the way around. So I think we are coming to a new paradigm in that sense, where we not anymore see the customer here and the bank here, but it's much more merging, and new technologies will help there. I'm quite convinced.
So Frederic, are you moving to a new paradigm? I mean, people were thinking the fintech would be the Uber of banking, shake things up a bit, but what we're seeing is that fintech are getting into bed with the banks, but they haven't got the money to develop their ideas.
Yeah, and I think as we've discussed, I'm not sure the fintech will be really the competitors. It might be more the GAFAs or other people, whatever. I think I agree. I think it's around really the culture. I mean, when you say this, there are different levels. Certainly in our bank, what we try to do is at least try to collect permanently as much as possible feedback, whatever the method, from the clients. And that should be the starting point to then decide where you want to invest, what you have to change. I think that's also a very important thing. Again, it's not just the front office, but as you mentioned, all the back office. And when I say this, it's the credit function, it's the compliance function. We've been through a period where effectively our whole regulatory framework has been changed and implemented. And to a certain extent, maybe the focus has been very much on this, forgetting also that it can have practical consequences from the client. So how to mix that? But starting from, I provide added value, which means better service, better time frame, whatever. It's just also the letters. I mean, there are very silly things. The way to express to the clients, the way to write to the clients. I mean, it's really to have this obsession, I would say, of the client satisfaction and added value, which has to be disseminated and permanently ensured by all the levels of the organization. And I think from that perspective, the CEO has a role to play.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like the tone at the top is changing. It's trickling down to the lower levels. That's the going to be the major disruptive factor that you need, really, isn't it?